happened to Ulysses of Homer's Odyssey? This had to do with the Argonauts, we remember. The name Ulysses comes from the Greek name Odyssey, Odysseus, meaning I get angry, I hate someone, and means angry, but also one hated by the gods, the one who gave reasons, dissatisfaction, and gave it to his grandfather on his mother's side, Autolycus. According to Homer, the name means son of stone, but it's more likely to be etymologically related to the word guide. It can also come from the verb I am strong, which means I cause pain, meaning one who causes and feels pain. Odysseus, or Ulysses, on the other hand, feels a constant mental and or physical pain. That is, he causes pain to someone else and at the same time someone else to him. Odysseus is sometimes attributed to patronymic nouns, Laertes meaning son of Laertes, Laertides meaning son of Laertes. Most believe that after he killed the suitors and recaptured his kingdom, they lived with Penelope and Telemachus was his son. They are fine and we are better, but it's not so. He tried to rebuild his life, but his relationship with his wife Penelope did not develop well. The quarrels began as Penelope, hearing Ulysses Odysseus tell her stories of her exploits and his exploits and adventures, invived Calypso, on whose island Ulysses has spent 7 years. She herself waited patiently for him and did not succumb to the suitors, while he fell from the arms of Circe and Calypso. So what happened to Ulysses, Odysseus? Queen Penelope's 100 suitors were killed and their bodies, one after the other, were taken out of the party hall, wrapped in carpets. Even though it was almost midnight, the house was still on its feet after the terrible events. The windows were out in the light of night and the servants were running back and forth. In the brightly lit bedroom, Ulysses began talking to his wife Penelope about his 20-year-old adventures, Troy, the king's quarrel in the camp, the return journey, and the wonders of the distant sea. Specifically, at the end of Rhapsody 1, it's mentioned, I said, and he wished to the great Poseidon, to the starry sky, extended his hands. O Poseidon, enter me, Geophor, black-eyed, if I am your true son. Father, do not leave Odysseus the conqueror. Laertides, a resident of petrified Ithaca, arrived at his house, but if his destiny wants him to see his lusts, the well-built house in the sweet homeland, let him arrive very slowly and with comrades, with a foreign bow, and bads the house inside navy. But when he reached Scylla and Charybdis, he noticed that Penelope had fallen asleep next to him, and he thought, she did a lot, she went through a lot today, poor thing, I will continue tomorrow. And he rested his head next to hers on the purple headrest. On the long journey back, Odysseus was most pleased with how he would tell his wife all these adventures and how she would hang insatiably from his lips and interrupt him with questions. But he quickly realized that he was not such an attentive listener. She was not such an attentive listener as the Phaeacians, who for 2 whole days listened intently to his melodic narration. When he started telling the story to Penelope, she was silently working on the gold pattern of the embroidery and looked abstractly out the window. When he once asked her a question, he realized that she was confusing the trawlers with lotus eaters, and that hurt him because he remembered exactly his experiences, which as they became more distant, he loved more and more. Only when he was talking about the nymph Calypso did she seem to listen more carefully, and this interest of hers excited and narrated his part of the wandering in more detail. The lonely island, the wonderful sacred grove, in the trees of which the seabirds nested, and the fragrant cave of the goddess. How long did he stay with Calypso? One asks. And he replied, 7 years. She bent down to her masterpiece, her embroidery, and her eyes darkened. I would like to know more about what you did during those 10 years with Calypso. 7 years, he replied. Yesterday you told me it was 10. It seems you're lying concerning your travels, my poor friend, that you no longer know how to tell the truth. But whether it was 10 years or 7 years, it was definitely a long time, and it seems you had a good time there. So answer my question. What have you been doing there for so long? And he had to answer her. Woman, all these years I missed you. All these years I was sitting on the sandy beach of the distant island, looking across the sea and begging the gods to be able to see once again only the smoke of your house. So he had to answer, but seeing that her eyes were looking at him coldly and hard, she kept her eyes on him. He never taught her about his great nostalgia for his homeland. I drank wine there, he answered calmly. The wine was good in the islands, although a little sour. During the Odyssey, Odysseus had ascended to Hades to consult the seer Tiresias, and among other things, prophesied there he would be killed by the sea and by his son. The oracle of Tiresias constantly keeps the hero captive. Penelope, I have to leave again. Wake up, wake up. I returned from the dead, sailing all the way west. I found myself in the land of the dead. I asked the dead Tiresias about my return, and he told me that a trial was still awaiting me, a terrible trial. I have to leave again with a paddle on my shoulder to go from city to city, from country to country, to walk constantly until I meet people who do not know the sea. One day, on my way, I will meet another hiker who will ask me, why do you have a paddle on your shoulder? On this day and in the same place, I will plant my paddle in the ground, and I will return home to Ithaca. Later, he said, when I'm old, death will come to me. It will come from the sea, or away from the sea. Penelope tries in vain to reassure him. Odysseus is still worried, wondering, where will death come from the sea or away from the sea? And who will hit me? And in Rhapsody Psy, during the conversation with Penelope, he says to her, the multifarious answered Odysseus, "O terrible, how hastily you hasten me to tell him, and here I reveal him without hiding anything. But how much you will not rejoice, as I too am not happy. And in many mortal lands he ordered me to take the road, bringing a straight oar with me, until I reach the mortals who do not know the sea, and where they do not eat food with salt. Neither the red-sailed ships they know, nor the straight oars, which are the wings of ships, and the obvious sign told me where I do not hide, to my bright shoulder that I have the leaky to the earth to set up the oar, he told me, and after I make king of Poseidon, welcome sacrifices, ram, bull slaughtering, and pig rider, to go around my homeland and give 100 of the immortals the domes of the heavens. In turn, the people, all this, he said, will happen. He suspects Telemachus, who is his son, whom he decides to exile to Kephallonia. Kephallonia is Cephalonia, which is very close to, right next to Ithaca. However, he regrets it, is convinced, and calms down. Telemachus is worried, as he is sure that he, according to the oracle, will kill his father. Later, he says goodbye to his parents and leaves. Odysseus expresses to Penelope his sorrow, but also his relief for the departure of Telemachus, his son, his joy to go down to the sea with the dogs, and his desire to finally be alone at night. Tiresias had also advised him that in order to appease Poseidon, when he returned to Ithaca, he had to leave the place to take a paddle on his shoulder, an oar in his shoulder, and travel offshore until he found someone who did not know the sea and what is an oar, there to sacrifice to the gods. In this new wandering, he'll meet someone who will think that the oar on his shoulder is a listrici, a wooden agricultural tool with which a grain of grain is separated from the straw. There to stop, sacrificing to Poseidon a ram, a boar, and a bull. Only in this way will he secure his final nostalgia in Ithaca, where quiet years and deep old age await him, and all his people around him will live happily. There will find him a painless death somewhere far from the sea. Indeed, according to mythology, this is what happened. After the murder of the suitors, Odysseus left again quickly with a paddle on his shoulders for Thesprotia of Epirus. Going inside the country, he met some people who asked him why he was carrying a Linistrari with him, and then he realized that this was a place where the oar had to enter, and he had to make a sacrifice to Poseidon. In Thesprotia, Odysseus married Queen Kallidike. She had a child with Polypoetes. After the death of Kallidike, after a war between the Thesprotians and Phrygians, Odysseus handed over the kingdom of Thesprotians to Polypoetes and returned to Ithaca, believing that he would grow old calmly. In the usage of Proclus, we read the following. After the burial of the suitors, Odysseus, after sacrificing to the nymphs, traveled to Ellida to inspect his cocoons, where he was hosted by Polyxenus, from whom he received a crater as a gift, meaning a bowl for drinking wine. Then he returned to Ithaca and performed the sacrifices. And then he went to Thesprotia, married Queen Kallidike, and led the Thesprotians in the war that broke out between them and Phrygians. And after the death of Queen Kallidike, Polypoetes, the son of Odysseus and Kallidike, took power, and Odysseus returned to Ithaca. In the meantime, Telegonus, the son of Odysseus, that he had with Circe, in search of his father, landed in Ithaca, and his companions destroyed the island. When Odysseus learned that a ship had docked in Ithaca and that the sailors had gone out for looting, he ran with his army to pursue them. However, he was hit by the leader of the raiders with a pole, which instead of an iron spear had a thorn of skate. He was taken to the palace, where he complained about the oracle that had made him laugh, telling him to be guarded by from his son, while he was finally beaten by a stranger who happened to be his son, with Circe. However, it soon became clear that the killer was his son, Telegonus, born to him by Circe, who did not know him either. The spearhead with which Telegonus fatally wounded Odysseus was made of the center tricycle of the current named skate. It's a fish with a pressed body on the back of the abdomen, plate-like scales, a long whip-like tail, and it's actually a stingray, and that sometimes has venomous thorn, which swings fast and usually moves on sandy and muddy bottoms. This was from Greek mythology, referring to the necromancer Tiresias, observed that the prophecies are always ambiguous, and that indeed death finds Odysseus from the sea, not only because the murderer had arrived in Ithaca by boat, but also because the deadly weapon was a naval weapon. It was the tail of a stingray. Then Telegon realized that he had killed his father Odysseus. It was too late. He took his lifeless body, his son Telemachus, and Penelope, and headed to Aia. There, Circe made them all immortal. Myth says that Circe married Telemachus, that is Odysseus' son, and Penelope married Telegon. Maybe in the end the Ithacans are not from the people of to reach, they are to miss them. So this is from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.